So welcome back to the course of Articulate Storyline 360, and today we are going to learn about the timeline. Now it's pretty important to understand what timeline signifies in Articulate, or maybe for that matter any other animation tool. The word time itself means that it's going to last for a certain time frame, and that's what exactly it signifies. Well, let me make it a little more easy for you. You see, basically here on the slide, we always kind of will be having certain objects. Here I have a character object, I have a button object and a shape object. And the way it works in Articulate is all of these objects will be having a default life of 5 seconds or 5.5 seconds for that matter. Now let's understand this in a life term. Like you are maybe here for 60-65 odd years or maybe 80 years if you get lucky. So that's your timeline of life. Likewise, in a slide, each of these objects will be having its own life, and that's what the timeline refers to. So it's basically suggesting as to how much time the objects will be there in the slide, and you also have the power of kind of playing around with that. So here if I see like Brandon will be there on the slide right throughout. So he will be there in the slide right throughout from the first second to the to 5.5 seconds. So if I kind of go ahead and preview the slide, I will see that all of them, like all the three objects that we have, will always be a part of the slide for 5 odd seconds. So I can simply kind of close it. Now, if I decide that, well, Brandon, I kind of, I want you to come from the second and maybe just be there for, just a second and then like go away. Well, that's all possible because you can drag the timeline for the individual objects and you can make them be there for some time. So I want the next button to be there for some time and then like go out. So right at the right at the corner, I like keep dragging this until I see this double-sided arrow, and then I can drag this. So I drag it till 3 seconds, which means that this shape here, like this red shape here, will be on the timeline for from the start to just a period of 3 seconds, and Brandon won't be there at the start. So let me now go ahead and let me kind of first save this, Control S. So I saved this. So I will go ahead and save. Once I save this, I can then go ahead and preview, and I just want to preview this slide and not the whole scene. So I will just go ahead and do that, and you will see Brandon won't be there, and he will be coming after some time, and this next will go. Brandon will be going because he would have gone after in the second anyways. So that's how you can play around with the timeline and make the objects come and disappear. So maybe you are suggesting certain bulleted points and you want the bulleted points to be there for a certain time. Sync with audio files. So when he's saying certain things pertaining to the first point, you want the first bar to appear. When he says something about the second bar, you want the second bar to appear, the first one to disappear. So you can play around with the timeline and the objects in that manner. So I hope you now understand how simple it is. Also, an important thing to note here is that in the timeline you will see something that's reflected as states. Now we have already spoken about object and object states before, but it's important to understand that in the timeline you can switch between the timeline and the states. The timeline will give you a real representation of how long each of the objects is going to remain in the slide for, and the states is nothing but it kind of lets you know like the different objects that you have on the slide, you come to know what states they possess. So for example, I have this button here, so these are the different states that it has. I have Brandon out here, I presently don't have state for him. I have this shape out here, I don't have any state for this. And likewise, like when I see different slides out here, I can switch between the timeline and the states. So the timeline shows me like a complete representation of all the objects and the different times they would be in the slide for. And when the states, I click on the states, well, I have to click on a certain object for me to know how many states that object will have. So I can do that for the button, or for the lily character, or for this explosion shape, which I have actually converted to a button. So I can go ahead and switch between timeline and states. And please do understand that each slide is different, and therefore it will have different objects, it will have different timelines, and then again the whole crazy drama. So hopefully this makes sense and you kind of get a picture about the timeline overview. Slightly moving on to, like, what are triggers and then what are slide layers. So stay tuned as we delve into those important concepts and then kind of make an interactive e-module for you guys. Thank you.